as like a crazy sore throat, and then I get super sleepy, and then once all that's gone, I get a runny nose and a cough.
Well, you're allowed, and I'm glad to have you back, and I'm glad you're healthy
you.
and happy and the like. And how are the
Thanks
kitties?
for all the sweet notes from everybody.
Yeah,
the whole audience.
We get very concerned about our Johnny Million. You know, it's the same as we get with Phil. Only we can feel it like it's a good thing that Phil has a shaved head, because his head would be on fire. Otherwise, he would have burned up his quaff this last 24 to 48 hours. Although, what seems to have happened, and we will talk with Phil at the end of this, is that except in MAGA land, the blowback on the Trump administration and that crowd has been entirely negative. Obviously, there are a bunch.
I was wondering if MAGA land would like it.
Oh, they loved it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're all for it. Like the response from a lot of the people was very over the top, and the general impression, oddly enough, was this: finally somebody stood up to Zelenskyy.
I knew that would be it,
and it's really odd, because the idea that their impression is that we have been bullied by Ukraine into supporting them against Russia, like it is so, like it's so removed from reality. It is such a bizarre like attachment to have. Like I don't know anybody that kind of feels that way, so I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where they get this in general, like. It just doesn't fit. It's so odd. It's so unlogical. It's so illogical, rather, that overall, in watching their response to it, it's very childish. It strikes me as extraordinarily childish and weak. Which again,
it was like playground bully stuff.
Yeah, and when it comes to MAGA, none of us are surprised by such a thing. We're getting all these wonderful like super chats and people becoming members and all that stuff, and I'm hearing the noise in the background, and it's adorable. I'm
not seeing YouTube yet.
You're not seeing YouTube up? Okay, I will check on that to make sure. We are. Oh, it might be. Hold on. YouTube event can bid it. It might be. We might need to make that listed. It might be unlisted right now. I think maybe CSL can do that for us or something. I will fix it. It's okay. It's just that last night I did a show. Hold on. There we go. We're up. I did a as I often do, if I may. I did for our YouTube, for our Patreon folks, I did I live streamed my stand-up shows at Flappers, and it was a great time. And we had Jan Karam dropped in, and you'll remember.
I don't know who that is.
Jan Karam, she's a comedian. She was like in Elaine Boozler's class of comedians that came up a while back, and always loved her work, and so it was really nice. I did an event on Thursday as part of Brian Karam, who's one of the White House correspondents that actually stands up to Trump, and he did this thing. It was me and Tom Arnold and Brian moderated, and we were talking about kind of like the first 100 days of Trump and the free speech in the era of Trump, because I have to say, for all the talk we hear about about Trump world and free speech and Elon Musk's story about free speech and the like, I gotta say, these folks are the most delicate, weak, like pitiable wimps when it comes to I don't know. They can't take a joke. They're way more sensitive to than I've ever seen anybody on the left. Well, I would say obviously there's some folks on our side of the aisle that react very heavily to what they see as obvious bigotry, right? On in the case of being anti-trans or anti-gay or women's rights or whatever, and so they're kind of piggish bully attitude. Obviously, people react very heavily to that, and I understand that. That makes total sense to me. By the way, we should be up in YouTube now, and we've solved that in the background. You're welcome. Hello, everyone joining us just now. So it was a great conversation overall, and Jan was there, and I invited her to come down and do a set last night at Flappers. So it was a good time had by all, and much comedy was going on. And there we go. Yep. There. Hello, YouTube folks. Welcome to the show. Sorry for the delay. So in the process, I unlist the channel for the time for that show, so it's just for our folks over at Patreon and stuff. It's a gift that I do. Mm-hmm. But what I will say is that I'm very aware of. I mean, you can sense the anxiety about Trump in particular, and everything he's doing is maddeningly insane. Some of the stuff is just bullish and gross again. Obviously, we had a contraction of 1.5 points in the economy this month, which is directly, January had this pop up because everybody thought his tariffs were going to go into effect. So everybody started buying supplies that they needed. So it artificially boosted imports, for example, really quickly. Yeah. And so in January, there was this elevated amount of, economic activity that looks like a good sign when you're coming into office. It looks like it gave him the illusion that business likes his decisions and business is going, it's like we're going to buy and sell and do all kinds of things. And in reality, they were just trying to get in under the wire. And in the last few weeks, that has completely died off when he instituted and then deinstituted his Canada-Mexico tariffs. And then he basically said they are going to go forward, once the 30 days is up, which again, may or may not be true, but the market has to react as if it is. So by threatening everybody that he's going to extend these tariffs and that they are actually going to go into effect, he's forcing people to buy supplies they might need for the year in massive bulk. Right? Like, okay, if I have a business and I need whatever you're going to do, plastic bags or, stuff that you get from a Chinese supplier or something like that, what you're going to need to do is buy as many of them as possible before the tariff goes into effect. Now, there's a problem with that when it comes to higher order stuff because those things aren't necessarily readily available right away. They have to be ordered ahead of time, and they may not be out for a little while, right? They may not be available to you. If you order them now, it might take them 6 weeks or 10 weeks or a couple of months to make stuff, electronics items, whatever, especially if there's a bigger demand, a rush before this. But what it does give Trump is the illusion of business excitement. And you can see this across the board where he's been talking about this. People are, our numbers are way up and everybody's, buying stuff and the money is flowing and yada, yada. And he's been saying this with Bessent in his conversation. Bessent knows better, but Trump does not. And the reaction, oh my gosh, Hal Vickery, thank you. How long until we become a third world country? Not for a long time, Hal Vickery. I'm sorry. Trump world will become a third world country before the rest of our country does. But again, the vast majority of Europeans don't hate Americans. They hate Trump and those who voted for them. And believe me, most European countries have been through this before themselves. The Germans just almost elected AFD. They get what's going on. And they don't blame every American for this. They're just going to have to deal with the real economic stuff.
They were so relieved that the normal conservatives won. Right.
So when we talk about these things, and we got to take a break, we'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. The Zelenskyy blow up, obviously we will cover with Phil when he comes on the show. But
You're cutting out a bit, Hal. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you just fine. I believe, personally, that it was all a distraction.
You're doing some max headroom on it.
We'll be back. Okay. We'll be back right after this. You were very smooth my way, so I didn't get...
Why, thank you. You were very jittery my way. I wonder what Trump says.
I honestly don't know. Happy Trump is an international laughingstock again day to all who celebrate. Thank you, Anne.
I saw one of those whiteboards, meme of one of those whiteboards that said number of days without America being an international embarrassment, 0.
Yeah. They're wiping it off, right? And that's
and then I just put zero right back.
Yeah, that's going to be a consistent thing for a while. And it's so ham-handed and he's so bad at hiding it that this is what it's going to be like for a short while. I don't want to bum anybody out any more than they might already, but he's going to keep this up because he does not have another plan. And unfortunately, while everybody's worried about how he might, leave Ukraine hanging, and we're cutting stuff for helping rebuild their electrical grid and stuff like that. Just petty stuff that they're doing because they can't get rid of the arms that Biden sent them. So they're doing other stuff to undermine. While that is an absolute concern, and and I can understand why people are worried about it, ultimately the impact of it won't be felt for months and months and months, which is why Vance and Trump were yelling at him, because none of their pressure is working. Because he's got enough weapons to keep fighting, and Russia does not.
The first time we get to see Vance in months, he's standing behind Trump going, yeah.
Right. Well, he didn't even. He jumped in front of him, right? He like defended him. That was the, it was like, well, we'll talk about it. Let's save this for the air because I know you watched a little bit of it, but thank you. Let's see. Additional settings. Let's go to here. Now
back to Hal Sparks on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT AM.
Welcome back. So, Johnny Million, you saw some of, I know you have a difficulty with social awkwardness and tension and conflict.
Yeah, I have a really bad, I am conflict averse.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I talk about politics.
Right, every week, right. But did you watch the Oval Office debacle that was?
I watched a chunk of it until it got really embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, too, is that there are members of the right wing, what's left of people on Twitter, including Elon Musk, who is online all the time. One of the weirdest things about Elon Musk is that for somebody who's supposedly the CEO of multiple companies, he is on Twitter all the time, like all day, every day, and I don't know why, like, how do you find the time, except for the fact that everybody there is, at your company is like probably able to do more work if you're not around, right? That seems to be, yeah. You know what I mean? Like that, the only thing that makes sense is like, hand him his phone so he leaves us alone so we can get some real work done. Because he's not in charge of anything at these companies at all. He's simply the money guy. And increasingly when it comes to Tesla, that money is running out. So I don't know if you've been following the Tesla stock price, but there's been basically...
Yeah, he's completely overvalued.
Yeah, and it always was, let's be honest, that it's above what it's worth anyways. If you look at stock for Ford or Chrysler or for like GM or even Toyota or something like that, these aren't really, there's obviously a lot of stock certificates out there, so they have lower prices maybe than Tesla has. Because there's not as many of them that, because they've been printed for years and years. This company's been around for a long time. But even still, they're in the, $14 to $27 range, and his is well up into the 200s. And that's, partly that's how, the limited availability of the stock, and they try to intentionally do that. But everybody was talking about 3 months ago, they were talking about it being 500. It has lost. So the stock market obviously has gone down in the last little bit because of fears of a recession. We had a contraction because of the economy and Trump's stupid economic policies, and everybody knows this. And that's why they're talking about this short-term pain for long-term gain. You're going to hear a lot of that from their side because they do not have a plan to salvage this. And so the only way that they can keep, the maggots in line is to convince them this is temporary. It is not temporary. This is what happens when you institute the kind of policies Trump is trying to institute. And in terms of the budget that the Republicans push forward, it includes, the extension of his tax cut and a $4 trillion raise in the debt ceiling. So the illusion of fiscal conservatism and that they ran on, we've got to pare down government and, and the debt's going to kill us all, was all nonsense. It's a farce. None of them actually believe it. And anybody who actually believes it is being sidelined. Chip Roy, all these other folks who maybe are true believers about fiscal conservatism and bringing down the federal budget and all that stuff. And all of Musk's Doge business, they've been messing around for weeks, and they've cut entire funding for entire departments and included that cut, even if they had to restore 80% of it, in their cut number. And that cut number is still hovering somewhere around $65 billion, which is inflated, farcical, stupid, not true. They're counting savings from contracts that finished last year. They're counting savings. Doge is counting savings from investigations that were started by the Obama administration that have that account for an accumulated number. So they stack that number every year. Like, hey, we've saved the taxpayer $71 billion in Medicaid fraud since 2012 is the idea. They're counting that whole number as part of theirs.
Yep.
They're counting, 30% of it, which is absurd. Like the last 3 years of stuff as theirs, because they're undoing. It's just ridiculous. So the issue that they have is that in all of Trump's promises that this is all going to work out magically, it fits right in with his promise. He ran on Afghanistan, getting us out of Afghanistan in his first term, and he didn't. Joe Biden did. All of these things are just him punting reality and hoping it never catches up. And in the meantime, Doge, and I don't know how much, I'm going to keep stressing this until everybody realizes it, Doge is a heist. All of its illusion of saving money, all of its, cartoonish stuff about, protecting taxpayers and, oh my God, trans comic books in Guatemala and whatever that, oh dear God, this $23,000 that was misspent when the budget itself is $7 trillion and the deficit is $2 trillion. You should be embarrassed to pat yourself on the back for a $23,000 saving. And especially if you're willing to grind foreign aid to a halt that is currently saving lives to save that little bit of money. That means your bigotry is more important to you than human life. So it's ridiculous. So on the one hand,
that's what that vote means.
That's exactly what it means. And to be it could be simply stupidity, but I think that's underselling it. It's a heist. They are using all this as cover, and they are throwing bone after bone at the right wing with their own personal bigotries and making them feel like action has been taken to cover for the fact that they are just grabbing information, which is the gold of our time, from all of these governmental sites to either feed Grok and his AI to provide it with data or to have leverage on people. You've got I pointed this out on my Blue Sky. I showed it like a little thumb drive that I have. It's 64 gigs. A 64 gig thumb drive can hold the financial records for 200,000 people from birth to death. Everything you've ever bought and spent in your entire life in a database can be stored on, 200,000 people. There are only 8,000 elected people in the country, from state legislature to the presidency. So, from local government, all that kind of stuff, mayors and the like, a little over 8,000 people. Having access to those people's entire financial history, everything they own, everything they buy, their shopping history, their and depending on the extent of it, their browser history, gives you an extraordinary amount of leverage on these folks. And that is really what this seems to me is about. It's not about saving money or they would be talking, they wouldn't be embarrassing themselves by pretending to have savings that were accrued during the Obama administration or certainly during the Biden administration. It's a joke. It's absurd.
Right. I heard that things are listed twice in error.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is it an error or is it just to inflate? Yeah. Yeah. It's to inflate the number so that because maggots aren't going to look at it. They're just going to go, oh, my God, look at the number climb. That's it. That's all they have to do. None of them are digging because they don't want to dig. And the comparison on that, by contrast, I would say, not comparison, by contrast, the Epstein dump was supposed to happen this week. And Pam Bondi said on Jesse Waters' show, that stuff is sitting on my desk right now, and it will turn your stomach. I have seen things that, you people wouldn't believe, and then when it comes out, it's stuff that's already readily available on the internet. It's not that at all.
And a lot of it's even more redacted than it was.
Oh my God. And the parts that aren't redacted are illegible because they put worse copies of stuff, the fifth gen copies, so you can't even make out the text, which seems to be the goal too, is that if you frustrate people, they're not going to comb through the thing. And while we might notice that it's harder to read Trump's name where it shows up, there are some parts where the names are completely gone. Now, if Democrats were in charge and they released these same documents through the FBI and the Department of Justice, and huge chunks of it were suddenly illegible compared to the ones online, the right wing, especially the Anna Paulina Lunas and the Liz Wheelers and the, what's the other one? Laura Loomer, all the right wingers who made this their cause celeb for a long time would be on fire. They would not stop screaming, going, this is obviously Biden's on this list, and he scrubbed his own name with an eraser.
Right,
and
exactly.
They would all be doing this. And right now, their brains want to go there. It's clear. If you watch any of them right now, last night I watched a clip of Glenn Beck talking to Liz Wheeler, one of the people that he has as a host, who was handed one of those binders by Pam Bondi, which was a farce. Yeah. And she was on there defending herself because the right wing was attacking her. She's a Blaze host for being a part of the cover up. That's what's happening on Twitter around this stuff right now. And
she's a Blaze host.
Yeah, she's a host on the Blaze who was just there to cover like the regular White House. They brought her into the White House for a private meeting with DC Drano and all these other right wing cat turd people, and handed them all these binders that had this, oh my God, this is the breaking news, amazing file of Epstein stuff, and you're the first to have a gold copy of it or something. And when they looked, it was the same stuff that was online. It was just less, it was illegible. It was impossible to read. And they all got attacked online. All these right-wing influencers that are the darlings of the right got attacked by their own people going, you are part of the cover-up. You are helping protect Epstein's network by being a part of this farce and the like. And so they're all in defense mode right now. I would argue that what happened with Zelenskyy, the blow-up yesterday, was to cover for that because they don't care what we think. We obviously are going to be horrified. They're never going to help Zelenskyy enough for us. Because they want him to lose. They're going to always support Russia or whatever. But the big blow up was there to cover for the fact that the right wing is attacking Trump land right now over this Epstein stuff. And I don't know how you couldn't see it coming. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million.
That's me.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, there we go. Whoops. I don't even know how this works. Yay. So yeah, I don't know if you've seen, I don't know how much like right-wing media you consume on the regular, if anything shows up in your YouTube feed because of what we talk about, but man, they are flipping out and it's glorious. It's so good to watch.
Now, flipping out over the Oval Office thing?
No, over the Epstein stuff. They're applauding, the, and it's certain influencers on the right are applauding the Zelenskyy thing, and it's clear they're helping cover for Trump's embarrassment about the Epstein files.
Yeah,
like they're jumping in to cover his back. There's bots all over Twitter.
20 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Theo Vaughn exposed himself as MAGA yesterday. I mean, he already is, isn't he? I mean, that's why he had Trump on. They all are.
It was a thinly veiled disguise.
Yeah.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
So there is, we have been talking quite a lot about FAFO in recent days, and the reason why Elon Musk is in any of our lives is because he, like a lot of born rich people or people with a backdrop of blood emeralds, elevating them to a wealth level where they could blanket VC capital technology that was on its way up. And if there's 3 PayPal-like systems coming up, and you can afford to invest $50K in the seed of all of them, you can't lose, and you don't get credit for being able to pick winners because you just had the money to drop that in there, and you could afford to lose the $100,000 for for the other 2 that don't take off, right? And so there's a break that the Elon Musks of the world, and largely Donald Trump, because he was he's a second generation rich kid as well. There's a distance between FA and FO that these people have that the average person does not have. You and I, in our lives, the line between the 2 halves of FAFO are very slim, right? And eventually the whole point of life, in a lot of ways, why you buy a house, why you finally own your car, why you get a relationship with a partner that cares, that you're working together to create a better life together. That is to increase the padding, if you want to have kids or do anything like that, between the FA and the FO. That's what a lot of us are doing. And there's the middle class. You could argue the middle class's entire existence is that expansion. That's what makes people middle class, is that expansion from wherever your humble beginnings are, expanding the space between fa and fo. And when you're somebody like Elon Musk, like I said, who was, raised in, blood emerald riches, when you're investing in things, there is a huge distance between the FA and the FO. And if you don't care about the ramifications of these things, and your parents will always be there to bail you out, it gives you a lot of flexibility. And you get in business, people will suck up to you because they assume that you're successful because you make great decisions, instead of realizing you actually make, a lot more bad decisions. You can just afford to make more bad decisions than most people. Yep. And so the good decisions you make, when they play out, will make a lot of money. But the losses, almost balance it out most of the time. And the good example with Elon Musk, and look at Trump. I mean, you could argue that Trump's successes have been entirely in his ability to subvert reality and sell people stuff that doesn't exist. Garbage, gold leaf furniture, and the idea that people come to him on The Apprentice for, because he's a business super genius, and they have to listen to him, give them advice, and if they're lucky, they'll at the end they'll get to work for him. Which is, never mind on The Apprentice, that's absurd, but on the Celebrity Apprentice, I found that brutal to watch, especially if I liked the person that was on there. The only upside was when somebody like Gilbert Gottfried would give them what for and knew it was a farce, right? But everybody else...
Yeah, how could you be like a quick-witted comedian and not just lash out?
Brutalize that guy. I'd have been off that show in an afternoon if I'd agreed to do it back in the day when they were floating the show around to my agent. And I was like, nope, no thank you. The dude's gross. I don't need to ever go anywhere near him. I don't care what the ratings are like. I don't need to ever go, hey, you were on the show with that rapey guy. It's just stupid. So, the Elon Musk and Trump have a lot in common in this. They have convinced a lot of people that they are smart, when in reality, they were just born with a bigger padding between FA and FO than the rest of people have. And they've been able to, because of, trends in certain areas, the business they were born into or the business that they were associated with, having nowhere but upside, technology and real estate being those kind of things, where people will always need houses and there's never enough, and apartment buildings and that kind of stuff. And technology is a growth industry, although, and this is one of the differences, is that unlike real estate, technology is deflationary. The whole purpose of it is it gets cheaper and more widely available, and
it's all about increasing convenience and lowering the efficiency.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and
Or
unlike
increasing the efficiency.
that's right, and unlike the direction of housing, which goes the opposite, people go from having a smaller place and a lesser place to a bigger place with a yard and those kind of things. Is the direction of that, but not everybody wants that, and it tops out and what's available in a city, and all, that's the limit of that market. So, but both of them in this zone still have a tremendous amount of distance between FA and FO, because they themselves are not going to feel it. Elon Musk is not going to feel the financial crunch that anybody else feels, even though in the last month, Elon Musk has lost $100 billion in his net worth. Since Trump was sworn in, Elon Musk's businesses, specifically the only one he really has any money in, which is Tesla, he himself has lost $100 billion in net worth, which last time I heard, he was just like Putin. He had like 200 billion net worth. That's what made him the world's richest man. That effectively...
That work.
Well, part of it is it doesn't. Okay. It's kind of like Trump Media and Technology Group. You only have that money if you sell the stock. But if you start selling the stock, the price of the stock goes down. So you actually are way less liquid. And there's ways to leverage that. And for example, Elon Musk doesn't pay any income taxes. How does he do this? Well, the way he does it is his company, Tesla, borrows his salary. The salary that he would pay himself out is taken out as a loan by Tesla. And his company gives that money to him as, but it's in debt for it. So he gets to write off that debt at a higher rate than his tax rate. So one never catches up with the other. And so his company gets a tax write-off that is higher than the tax cost he himself would pay on that money because of how it's doled out. And so he avoids paying any income tax whatsoever, no matter how many, millions or billions they pay out, because it's debt, according to his company. Trump has been involved in stuff like this before, but never on this kind of scale. But again, you have to look at the fact that, okay, Tesla is the only company where he has any, what would be real wealth, even in this circumstance, where if he's worth 200 billion on paper, he's worth $80 billion at the end of the day. Because after you sell half of it, you still have to pay tax on those gains. And then you have to, again, the price will go down as you start to sell. If the CEO of the company starts selling the stock all over the place, then the price will go down because people will think there's something wrong. That often happens. That's the one thing about being like, if you're an officer of the company and you just sell it just sounds like something you're doing personally. But if you're the CEO and you start selling, people are like, uh-oh, what's wrong? And they start selling. Okay. And if you if you need the money. So ironically, people in Trump's position or in Musk's position have a tighter element on their liquidity of their stock than any other officer in the company, maybe shy of the CFO. If the CFO starts selling, that might even be a bigger red flag than the CEO themselves or the head of the company, right? Because that person clearly knows where the bodies are buried financially. And if they're starting to sell all their stock, you should take that as a warning. That said, Elon Musk's, SpaceX doesn't make him any money. SpaceX is a government-funded organization that is nowhere near profitability yet. And the cost of it one day might, be extraordinary, but it won't be for a decade. And they know this. Same thing with XAI. He's building this giant Memphis server farm to run his, Grok and his AI, which is effectively, I believe, cover for making a giant crypto mining facility, believing that crypto is going to take off under Trump. So they just invested in this big crypto mining facility, pretending it's an AI facility. That's what they're really doing. Because you don't need a facility that big for AI once it's trained. It's just silly. You build it for a while. It could be temporary, like a refugee camp. And then once it's trained, you just drop it. So all of his money's in Tesla. And Tesla's stock has gone, the rest of the market has taken a 7% dip in the last month because of people recognizing the tariffs and the stuff that Trump is doing that is going to affect the economy negatively. Look at the kitty. But Tesla's stock is down 27% the last I checked. Might be 25% now because he's boosting it. Other people are buying in, trying to help him. But 25%, a quarter of its value in this last little bit. And again, if he starts selling to get out of it, or if he starts buying, it looks like he was part of a pump and dump, like they're doing this on purpose. So it all looks hinky no matter what anybody does. But here's the biggest problem. And this is the thing that this is right up there with the maggots reflecting on this Epstein thing, where you're like, how do you not see this coming? How do you not see that Trump was friends with Epstein for 25 years? Epstein called him his best friend. Mark Epstein, his brother, still thinks he's alive and that Trump helped him escape. He was arrested during Trump and they were buddies forever. And now, the cameras were off and the guards were sleeping. And it's just a cartoon of these kind of things. You don't think you could buy your way out of a jail and get yourself a corpse that looks like you for $1 billion? The guy was worth $60 billion, right? It's how did your brain not go there? Meanwhile, by the way, I fight my brain not going there. I go, I don't want to buy into this conspiracy theory about it, but the QAnon people and the maggots are super conspiratorial about everything. They think everything's a globalist conspiracy. They think, there's a George Soros behind everything they don't understand in society, economics, or politics. They think there's the ghost of Soros behind it. But somehow, this is I don't know, I don't know. They were friends for a while, then they stopped being friends, and then he died. I don't know. That plausible deniability is absurd in this situation, and the suspension of disbelief necessary to dilute yourself on that level is unfathomable to me in that regard. And the same thing is true in this situation with Tesla stock. So right now, there's a ton of copium videos online.
And also, just to jump in, it's the same thing that makes all of them defend the billionaire class, because they all think they're going to be billionaires.
Oh yeah, they want low taxes because one day they're going to win the lottery. They don't even think they're going to earn it. That's the weird thing. It's a big portion of them think they're going to have a windfall, like their parents are going to die and leave them something that's magically, I had no idea my dad was a millionaire and he threw money your way. Or they're just going to, win the lottery and they don't want the government to take half of it, as if, I don't know, the effort of it. But when it comes to Tesla, if any other CEO attacked the customer base the way Democrats are the audience for electric cars, Democrats and people who care about the environment.
Weird?
I know. Democrats and people who care about the environment are the electric car market entirely. And
Yep.
maggots and, in the right wing hate electric cars on principle. They despise them even if they're better. They hate them.
They think they're wimpy, even if they're faster,
Right.
No matter what.
Right. And if any other CEO did this, remember how they reacted to Bud Light? One ad campaign. Right? Dylan Mulvaney, and that's the end of Bud Light. And the right wing was like, they need to fire that CEO. She doesn't understand who her customer base is. Blah. Remember that? That was one campaign. Elon Musk has systematically not only alienated his customer base in the United States and Europe, the primary one, but in China, they are stealing his technology, and basically BYD is the Tesla vehicle, and they're just selling his stuff out from under him, which is ignorance on another level. He has dismissed his entire customer base. If that was anybody else, these people would be calling for their, they have to step down. They're gonna tank the company.
They'd be kicking him out. They'd be like, "You are really bad for our brand."
Exactly. But they can't. And so they are trapped, and he is trapped in the same cycle because he cannot reverse course. There is no upside to this. There is no version of reality where Tesla becomes the electric car of choice for people who care about electric cars. Rivian stock was going down with everything else. It went up 1.5 points. And the reason it went up, it's an electric car company. Like all the other car companies that sell electric cars, like if people are in the market for an electric car, the last thing they're thinking about buying is a Tesla right now. And that's the only thing Tesla does. And it's all because of his actions. And I'm just tired of people saying he's a smart businessman and he's a super genius. When this is baseline idiotic, like business management, marketing management. It's so low res and stupid. I don't know, again, I do know why they give him credit because to admit they were wrong about him is too much of a hit to their ego. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Johnny Million has a live stream, it's called It's Johnny Million on Twitch and YouTube.
It actually happened yesterday.
Yay, and he's actually back at it after being under the weather. Or on top of it, or it being on him. I don't know.
It on top of me.
They there was a hold on one second. Yeah. Let's see, hold on.
Got to get rid of my cereal bowl. Damon was really into it.
Uh-oh.
It's the sink.
Sure, that's what you're doing. Sure.
Yep. I've got a really strong flow, my man.
Very proud of you.
No lunch yet, buddy. Well, maybe it is lunchtime.
We're back in 10.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're locked into the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So one of the things about the world is that it just keeps on rolling, okay? And I don't think people have this grasp of, like, when Trump is eating up a lot of the news cycle, it's increasingly frustrating because there's a lot of real world news that happens behind it. And this is where, like, Elon Musk attacked the Fed this week for, apparently delivering numbers that he was very upset about, right? That there was a contraction of 1.5% in the economy. That's going to continue. We are gearing towards a recession that is triggered directly by Trump's tariffs. And Musk and everybody, on one hand, they know this. They know this will be it, and they're trying to convince people that it'll be better on the other side. Now, there's no situation where you have a contraction and growth was how Trump was going to solve his tax problem. That we're not going to have to worry about debt accrued by my tax break because we're going to grow our way out of it. Well, you don't grow in a recession. This is the exact opposite. So you don't get to pass that during a recession or trigger a recession right after it, or and again, the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans are working through this nonsense right now. And neither of them are game for this kind of debt this early. And if they punt it, and we have 3 months of contraction, which is exactly what we're going to have, especially if he lets his tariffs go into effect. There is just no way they pass this year. There's no way they can shove it down their constituents' throats in these red districts that were like, we need to get this budget under control. We need to shrink government. The Republican House budget adds $4 trillion to the debt ceiling, giving Trump $1 trillion a year of funny money to flood the market, basically like keep priming the engine the entire time he's in to give the illusion of growth while he's there. And the Senate version is Biden's budget plus $340 billion, which they already said was bloated and too big and they needed to cut and blah, blah, blah.
Of course.
And the $340 billion is all border stuff and, military expansion and National Guard troops and overall just like reinforcing the border wall and those kind of things. And having an entire force of the military stationed all along the border. Now, I would argue that one of the ways you kill two birds with one stone. You want to contract some, here's an idea. You want to contract some military spending while solving one of the problems that you have. What you do is you take your South Carolina base or your Oklahoma military base or your South Dakota base that you have, and you move them to Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Now, Texas already has one, but you put them right on the border. And that way, you have soldiers and bases training at the border all the time. If there's a big breakthrough, you've got troops right there. If you think we need that many soldiers on the border all the time, then move the base there. Put a base there and benefit Arizona and New Mexico specifically, and Southern California. San Diego has a couple of bases near it, but one right up against the border. Put it there. California, New Mexico, and Arizona get all this military funding all of a sudden that was going to Oklahoma or South Dakota for God knows why, or South Carolina or something like that, and watch the Republicans squeal. Like, look, if you want those soldiers down there, don't just station them down there like we're having an attack all the time and, like you're playing a bad game of Risk. Move the base there. Let them train down there. And then, if something comes up, they're right there, right? You don't have to move them in. They're just always there. They're always doing exercises. Okay, two birds, one stone. Save yourself a bunch of money, relocate these bases, and put them down there. If you think that's the threat, then show us that you really believe that. They don't. What they want to do is cover the number of people that Trump is firing in the federal government with an increase in military size. By so that the numbers zero themselves out. They can't do it, but they're going to try. That's one of the things they're trying to do is increase the, military personnel to make up for the people they are firing from the federal government because it's going to affect employment numbers. And then, again, I guess you're going to sell stuff to those soldiers that you have stationed down there to make up for consumables that were not bought otherwise because they're away from home. So they'll buy 20% more stuff than they would if they were living in their own house. So if if you move the base down there, they're living at home. So you could just use your towels every day. You don't have to buy new stuff. You don't have to buy new clothes. You don't have to stock a fridge because, more often, or because it's a small one, you have your one big one at home. You might have a freezer in the garage, that kind of stuff. And you artificially inflate consumption by 0.5 percentage point, maybe, by doing some big movements like this. But it's not going to be enough. What Trump is doing economically is far more devastating than he's aware of. And there is no way to put that toothpaste back in the tube. Even if he calls off the tariffs, it's going to sound like he punted them. MAGA is going to attack him for just bluffing. They're already mad about the Epstein files. They're going to be mad if he pulls the tariffs off China before he pulls them off Mexico and Canada. If there's a 90% reduction at the border already in people, then what more could you ask from Mexico? Honestly, as far as tariffing them. And again, all this proves to me is that USMCA was a terrible deal. Why in the world would you need to get into a tariff fight with Canada and Mexico if your trade deal was so great? If USMCA is the greatest trade deal ever signed, how do you find yourself in this position? You have a treaty.
Right.
right? Apparently, I'll tell you why. Because it's garbage. It was a light modification, and it was so poorly written by the people he had in there, including Lighthizer, who's not a stupid person, but that means Trump insisted on things that were dumb, that they left loopholes in it for China while Trump was negotiating about country of origin materials so that China could build stuff in Mexico and wink, wink, slide it into the country and keep the goods and services coming into the country, the low price consumer goods coming into the country without it looking like they're coming from China and looking like USMCA was great. That's what he did. That's what Trump did. He hid the economic damage he was doing. He spackled it with this USMCA thing. That's what that was about. And there is no version of reality where Trump's economic strategy that he's playing out right now does not contract the economy. Even if you think it's going to fix itself later, even if your argument is it'll be better, we'll make it all better, it's going to be fine, it's just like this now, but we'll get through this. And that's what Elon Musk has been saying. Oh, it's going to be really hard up front, but it's going to be so much better in the end. Well, he's got that FAFO pad. He's got that distance between FA and FO that the average person, and especially the average maggot, does not have. Red states, right? Red states do not have that cushion. They don't have the FAFO cushion. We should sell pillows that have an FA on one side and an FO on the other. Right? Yeah. Right. To illustrate this, because he's not going to be affected by this. Even if he lost, 80% of his wealth, 90% of his wealth, he'd still have more money than he could ever spend. Trump does not even have as much cushion as he does, so he'll break before Musk does. Right? Trump will see the problem. The blowback from MAGA will affect Trump well before it affects Musk financially and politically. And that's when the fight starts. The question is a matter of when and whether the fever breaks before it cooks the country. That's what we're staring, right in the face. This is, and it's not surprising, Trump's whole strategy, and people need to know this, is that when he is ignorant of a circumstance and he does not understand things, he starts making outlandish demands and statements about stuff because he can gauge by the room who reacts to what on what he said, whether what he said was true or possible or reasonable. He has no idea. But if you start going, everybody run out the left door, everybody run out the right door, everybody who knows the left door is locked or there's a fire on the other side is just going to stand still. And everybody who says run out the right door, if people start running out that way, you can at least see what they're doing. That's what he does. He has no idea. He has no idea. He doesn't know how any of this stuff works. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this with Philip Ittner joining us from Kyiv. I'm sure that he will have. We're going to try and keep him from swearing. We'll be back right after this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I gotta say, it's becoming completely clear that Trump has no idea. I don't even think he has a grasp at this point on the fact that Russia invaded. That he can't even see that, or he won't allow himself to even.
Yeah, I don't know where he landed, how he landed there.
I don't either. It's weird. It's so weird and so blind that you're like, I understand if he's just sucking up. I understand even if you've got leverage on somebody, they have to push back on this stuff. Look at Tim Pool or Dave Rubin or any of that crowd. They'll defend Russia in a way that is clear that they're, there we go. Hold on one second. Let me jump in here and go to, I got to stretch the, come here, you. Stretch this out. Three-peat. There we go. Let's jump into here. And yay, there's Phil. Hey, Phil, welcome.
Yay, Phil.
Hey, guys.
It is.
Are we in a break or are we on the
Yes,
air?
we're in a break. We're in a break. We're at the top of the hour.
On
Yeah.
a water break.
So this is well. I'm going to save everything for our conversation on the air. The weirdest part of all of it, I have to say, was the TASS reporter being in the White House.
Yeah.
Because apparently they were, as soon as somebody found out, they were kicked out. So the question is how'd they get in the first place? And it doesn't seem like that it was, they let him in and then they were like, on the down low and they were going to do him a favor until somebody noticed. It seems like they borderline snuck in or were already there and just walked from one room to the other because somebody else let him in. It's hard to, it's super weird.
Sketchy.
Yeah.
Sketchy.
Yeah.
Sketchy. Shouldn't have even been, should not have been in the White House to start with.
Right.
So what's that all about?
Right.
That doesn't happen by mistake.
No. It's super curious. But also like the issue we run into with Trump and that whole crowd was there's a lot of evil going on there, but there's also a lot of just terrible management. They're just really bad at everything as well. So that's partly what, and maybe it gives them some plausible deniability. Just like, if you suck too, like, how do people know when you're being evil? Maybe I'm just terrible, right? Yeah.
Banality of evil.
Yeah.
I don't know. I forget at the moment who coined that phrase, but yeah.
Yeah. I do think that if anything, like Europe has stepped up because of Trump and Vance, and most of the American people, with the exception of like direct maggots, are aghast at just how awful and embarrassing that was. And that's been the news across the board, with the exception of, the obvious, Fox News and Newsmax or whatever. And on Twitter, like the usual suspects. But the vast majority of people were like, this just seemed nuts, like them ganging up on Zelenskyy and making it his fault. At least maybe, and maybe this is the beginning of the end of that part of it. Thank you, Chicago.
Thank you, Chicago. Good to hear you, Chicago.
Good to hear you too, Philip.
Yeah. So, super bizarre.
Yeah.
And
You're listening to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
well, I think after yesterday's White House spat between Zelenskyy, Trump, and Vance, where Trump and Vance ganged up on Zelenskyy and seemed to get every detail about this conflict completely wrong, while having more of an emotional collapse than a political attack. We've all been waiting for Phil to join us to talk a little bit about this, because we're certainly, the hard part will probably keeping you from swearing on air. I know it's difficult for me at times when talking about this, but welcome to the show, Phil, host of On the Edge, new show tomorrow. Do you have a new episode coming out tomorrow? Yep, excellent.
I do. Yep.
So thoughts right out of the gate on your experience, what you've heard over there, what, how people are reacting to it, what you're seeing in the media over there as well.
Most of my stuff is kind of anecdotal.
Yeah.
Going out, doing my shopping, going to the local market, going to the coffee shop, going to my little craft beer place. And I would say overwhelmingly it is pro Zelenskyy.
Yeah.
That his support is strong. I do have a couple of friends, associates, and colleagues even at On the Edge who have expressed that they were disappointed that Zelenskyy fell into the trap, as they describe it, and that he may have been provoked, but he should not have fallen
taken
for
the bait.
He shouldn't have gone for the bait.
Mm-hmm.
With due respect to my Ukrainian friends, and ultimately I defer to them. This is their country, and I don't dictate to them. But with due respect to them, I don't think they've got it right. Maybe it's because I'm coming from an American perspective, and I know the danger that Donald Trump presents to our country.
Yep.
And his nature, and I mean, it was what I say to my friends who are like, Zelenskyy shouldn't have, pushed back. It wouldn't have mattered. Trump and Vance were dead set on a confrontation.
Yes.
For a variety of reasons, put him in his place, sort of thing. Maybe, I think maybe they wanted to get away with both the mineral deal, which they hoped to personally profit by, but they also wanted to belittle Zelenskyy, and it didn't play out the way they thought it would. And I have been regrettably on social media. And the point I have been making is that one of the points that I have been making is that if they had done their homework, Trump and Vance, they would have understood that bullying a leader of Ukraine, of the sovereign country of Ukraine, that has only now gained its independence from colonial rule after centuries of being dictated by a foreign capital, and by the Kremlin in particular, that trying to dictate to that leader, who is a representative of the Ukrainian people, demands from another imperial power was the exact wrong thing to do. It elicits a whole bunch of stuff from the history of this country where other powers have always said to them, you must do this or you must do that. And if they were educated men, if they were knowledgeable men about what this place is, because neither of them have been here, that is something that Zelenskyy definitely got to point up on Vance with. Yeah, you've never been here. You don't know these people. And that was the exact wrong technique and the exact wrong approach. If you really wanted him to sign that agreement, which I do think Zelenskyy was potentially, willing to do, but he wanted assurances. He knows his enemy better than these guys do. These guys don't know Ukraine, and they don't, frankly, even know Russia, even though they appear to be swallowing Russia's narrative. It was ham-fisted. It was wrong. It wasn't diplomatic. It wasn't well thought out. It wasn't considered. It was belligerent.
Yeah.
And even if Zelenskyy did fall for the bait and acted in a way that wasn't in the best interest of his country, because we do need these weapons from America, it was the wrong way to go about it. And sadly, the president of our nation scuppered this deal. I mean, if he wanted it to happen and to get his Nobel Peace Prize and the little ego boost that he could then go and say, I solved the war, that was the 100% wrong thing to do, to try and force a former colonial power that is only now coming into its own sovereignty to approach it as another colonial power dictating what it should do was a stupid, short-sighted thing to do.
Sure. Well, and, like David Frum wrote in The Atlantic that, part of the downside is that, I mean, it's hard to see if there's an upside. So here's the issue that I have with the entire exchange was, what's the trade-off here? What's the other outcome that was possible? if there was another outcome that was possible where quietly Ukraine makes a deal where they're, deferential to Trump and his weak ego, and they give J.D. Vance some sort of talking point he can tout around that he was integral to the process, but ultimately they get screwed and Russia's able to just mount a continuing attack on them because there's no security guarantees and the like, and it leaves this gaping hole for Russia to attack through, then blowing it up there's no loss. It's a zero loss circumstance. There is no real deal to blow up, right? That's the issue, I think, that most people are drawing from, including, anybody who seems to be talking about it on this side that has any sort of sensibility, even on the right side of things, on the right wing side of things, what Trump, I'm sure, will deride as rhinos. All of them are talking about it in terms of you might be upset that there was this horrible exchange and maybe there was a possibility that Zelenskyy could have gotten this deal. But the reality is, that's a farce. That deal was never going to happen, unless it had security guarantees. And if Trump was trying to force him to take that deal without them, then it's not a deal to start with. So you can't blow up something that doesn't work. And without it, they were going to pull support anyway. So better that Zelenskyy, I think, deprived Trump of the illusion of being a good statesman and intelligent on the world stage and showed him for the weak bully and moron that he is. Same with Vance. That was a better strategy overall, even if this idea, because again, we deal with this with like the Young Turks and the public option and all this stuff. Like, you should have fought till the very end. So what? The 24 million people never get insurance? Great.
Mm-hmm. That is such a good point. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because I wanted to pinpoint something. If you go back to the video, and I never want to watch the video again, so I would understand if folks don't.
Yeah.
But if you go back to the video, not the audio, go to the video, and just as Zelenskyy and Vance are about to go at it, and it's clear, I'm sure it was palpable in the room, that this was headed to a confrontation.
Sure.
There is a moment in time. Everybody's been posting the video of the Ukrainian ambassador to America, like putting her hands in her, her head in her hands and shaking her head. But I think if you look at the layout of that room and where she was sat and where Zelenskyy was sat, there is a moment in time. Go back and look at the video.
Yeah.
There is a moment in time when Vance is clearly starting to edge towards attacking Zelenskyy.
Yep.
And Zelenskyy, look at his eye line. If you look at his eye line, he looks directly at the ambassador.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit, there's eye contact there, and there's some communication that happens.
Yeah.
Zelenskyy looks at her, and he kind of shrugs, and then he goes for it. And then he goes to Vance. And I don't know the nuance of what the Ukrainian ambassador to America and the president of Ukraine had in that nonverbal communication.
Right.
But it seems to me like he turned to her and was like, I'm going to burn this down.
Yeah. Well, there's
the
important thing people need to know.
And she must have responded to him.
Part of Trump's benefit in this situation is the illusion that there was a deal to be had. And what I would state is that I have not seen a single thing that says to me at all that there was a genuine deal on the table that would meet the needs security-wise of Ukraine and not leave them open to a continuing attack a la 2014, 2015 by Ukraine at a time of its choosing after it reconstitutes its military with no security guarantees whatsoever. That is not a deal. And so the problem is, if you allow it to go forward and you glad hand with them in that situation when you're being attacked like that or pushed aside. The problem is you allow for the illusion that deal exists to permeate the media landscape. You blow it up, people draw attention to the fact that there was here's what you would do if you were the Trump administration, if there was a real deal. You would release the paperwork on the deal that you had and go, this is the deal we were going to sign, and he blew it up. That's what you do. But they can't do that because if you look at it, it has no promise of security guarantees in it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And everybody will see it and go, I wouldn't sign that either. My country would be destroyed. You're an idiot. And that's the illusion that he's a deal maker is what he floats on. And the more and more people get a look at how bad he is at deal making and how a petulant child he is, and his idea is that we can just walk away from everything. He wasn't able to walk away from COVID. He wasn't able to walk away from the George Floyd riots. He's not going to be able to walk away from this ridiculousness about Gaza and displacing 1.8 million Palestinians from Gaza alone. And he's certainly not going to be able to walk away with the illusion that he had this magic deal on the table and Zelenskyy screwed it up. And Putin's just this poor innocent victim of a war he started himself. It's dumb. And that has to be called out. And I think Zelenskyy, you want to talk about, the darkest before the dawn part, but there's a real necessity that Zelenskyy, I think, exposed Trump for the fraud he is. There is no deal. We got to take a break. And when we come back, I want to discuss, a little bit about how like the EU is stepping up and, and that may indeed be part of Trump playing himself. We'll be back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just they are like Trump and Vance came across as whiny, petulant morons, and this whole thank you. You should be thankful. That business that they were throwing around was so petty, so petty and so weak that anybody except the MAGA faithful were like, ugh. It's one of the reasons why his numbers are going down.
It's going to make for going to make for great television.
Welcome back to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Right before we came back, Phil, when you're saying something like it makes for great television and that's why Trump does this kind of thing, I think one of the other things, and I discussed this with Johnny in the first hour, that might be a part of this whole conversation that seems like a complete sidetrack, but is, we obviously know that Trump will use whatever he can to just cover, for every mistake in his life. The Epstein files that were supposed to come out this week, that Pam Bondi was telling everybody was going to be an extraordinary thing and a huge step forward, and MAGA itself has been beating on Trump's door to get this stuff. And it's always been, I don't care how deluded these people are, there's always been that thing in the back of your head, well, they were friends for a quarter decade, and the guy did get arrested and die or disappear during Trump's thing, and the records the FBI seized when they arrested him in 2019 have never been seen, and that was under Trump. Where are they, right? But, if the Biden administration had held him back, it'd be one thing, but the Trump administration didn't. And again, this time, so Pam Bondi makes this huge promise on Jesse Waters about this is going to be amazing. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's on my desk. We're just redacting some stuff, and then we're going to release it. And the next morning, it's a huge dud, and she's lying. It is obvious that she was talking, out of school, and that they didn't have anywhere near that stuff. And MAGA was mad, livid, all over Twitter. And one of the things that knocked that story, temporarily, however, off the front lines or the front pages was the Zelenskyy exchange with Vance and Trump. And that in and of itself, the idea that they would upend a situation like this that they don't really care about anyways to cover for the fact that MAGA, it's just the only people they care about, are livid right now that the Epstein stuff is not coming up. And Trump himself said this. Trump said in that Fox interview when they're like, would you release the JFK stuff? Yes. How about the RFK? Yes. What about MLK? Yes. What about Epstein? Well, I don't know.
There's some people involved.
There's some phony stuff.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Right. And he said it. He didn't, say what you will, but he wasn't lying. Fox lied for him. They edited that to make it look like he got to keep that stuff, right? He got to,
and it's very Russian. It's very, if the Tsar only knew.
Yeah.
It's not, the MAGA types aren't attacking Trump for having redacted that stuff.
They're attacking
They're
Bondi.
attacking the state. and Bondi and the quote unquote deep state, that they're the ones that are responsible for redacting things and not giving things. Oh, who's to say? Who's to say? You know, somebody should ask Donald Trump.
Here's what I would say.
Are you okay with the redactions? Should that be changed?
Yeah, I don't know why somebody in the press needs to go. You know, Pam Bondi is really feeling left out in the cold, obviously, because of something. Here's what I would say. If you want to see how this really shook down and you want a real explanation, here's my explanation. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, head of the FBI and the DOJ under Trump, apparently said, give me all this information. I want to release it. But the FBI didn't for some reason. The other field offices. Well, who can tell them not to? Who can tell them to ignore Pam Bondi and Kash Patel? Donald Trump. The president himself can order, materials not to be given to anybody in his cabinet because they work at his pleasure. He can dictate what they get to see and what they don't. So he gets to, he could call around them. He could call the field office in SDNY and say, hold on to that stuff. Don't release it to them right now. That's a presidential directive and this is secret. And they would have to do it. They would have to do it. And they wouldn't be able to tell Pam Bondi or Patel. And he would get to undermine the FBI at the same time.
Absolutely. Or alternatively, and I don't know, none of us know, but there's certain things we do know about, like how procedure is done. If you're Kash Patel and you say, give me everything we've got in the archives, and it lands on your desk and you're like, oh my God, my boss. And you're going to tell me that Bondi or Patel are telling us the truth in who redacted what, whether or not they themselves redacted that stuff, and we believe them just because they say so? No, the whole thing stinks. The whole thing stinks. And, I mean, we know that Epstein and Trump were, best buds for 15 years. He's all over that document. I don't care who redacted it. At the end of the day, it was redacted because his fingerprints are all over it.
Trump said he never flew on the plane. This was one of his big selling points for a longest time or whatever. We found out later that he had flown 3 times. Then it turned out to be 7 times. Now, as of even the stuff that they released, 8 times. 8 times that we know of. And that doesn't count the times that Epstein flew on Trump's plane. We don't have Trump's flight logs for the number of times that Epstein flew on him. And there's even a story about how Epstein was late for a flight on Trump's plane back to West Palm Beach because these two guys have never lived more than a 9-minute cab ride for each other since 1980. Think about that for a second. Think of all the cities in this country where a developer with golf courses could live, and he manages to live a 9-minute cab ride, a short. You could take an electric golf cart back and forth between their properties. New York and Manhattan and in West Palm Beach, 8 minutes apart. 8 minutes apart. What are the odds? What are the odds that your house is always that close to that dude or vice versa? He always is buying a place to be close to you, or you're doing, because Trump moved to Mar-a-Lago from New York after Epstein had already had that place. He didn't move over by his golf course. He didn't move to Miami where he's got Trump Tower Miami and live in the top 3 floors like Oprah does downtown Chicago, right? He didn't do that. He moved 9 minutes away from Epstein. He's never lived outside that guy's, where if Epstein calls, he could be there in minutes. That's crazy. And we now know it was never, and then it was 3, and then it was 7. Now it's 8, and that does not even include it. So Epstein flew on a flight that we know of. There was a story about this because Epstein was late. He was with Maxwell and an unknown underage girl. They flew on Trump's plane from New York to West Palm Beach, and apparently Trump complained to Epstein like, "Hey man, you don't be late for other people's flights," or something like that. And Epstein laughed in his face, laughed it off. He was like, "What are you gonna do?" Think about that for a second. You're flying on this dude's plane, and he's like a well-known developer and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, you have to hold your plane for me. What are you going to do? Well, what kind of, either you're that close as friends that you can shrug it off, or you have leverage, right? Or you're just not going to ride on my plane again. Well, we know he rode several times after that. When did Trump's plane go down to Little St. James Island? When did it, none of that. It's all opaque. And Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Laura Loomer and Anna Paulina Luna and whoever the hell they're putting in have been diving into this stuff because they're serious about it. They really do, I think, as awful as they are on other fronts, I think they're genuine, that they are disgusted by who Jeffrey Epstein was. I don't know how you couldn't be. And that they want to get to the bottom of this. And they think it all leads to a trail of Bill Clintonism. And they're going to finally take down this guy who they think disgusted everyone with his behavior in the White House. End of story. And take Hillary with them. And that'll be that. But the problem is, Clinton flew back and forth to Africa a couple of times with him, and Epstein was lending his plane to a lot of people to get influence and power and get close to him. But Trump partied with the dude. They were friends. Epstein said in an interview, I was his best friend. Mark Epstein said they were closer than I've ever been to my brother. And there's no way Kash Patel and Pam Bondi don't look through those files and that starts to come together. There's just no way that they miss that. So, and again, do the Russians know this? Is this part of the leverage they have? Is that, they've
got something on them.
Yeah, they got something. Yeah. Or and again, I don't know how ugly it could possibly be compared to the rest of it. It's either worse than or equal to whatever's in the Epstein stuff. That's the only thing I can think of.
He's compromised. Look, he is compromised. He is.
There's no question.
He is. There's something
he owes them
happening. Yeah, and I don't know to what extent.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he is in the Oval regurgitating Russian talking points and treating Russia's primary foe, a head of state, the way he did. All Americans should be looking at this and going, "There's something wrong here." There's something very.
I'm sure you saw this.
Here.
I'm sure you saw this, and I don't know, Johnny, if you got to watch this part of it too. But when he was defending Putin, he started going into this whole thing about how Putin was dragged through this as well.
We went through this together.
We went through this together. It was so bizarre. It was such an odd turn. There are ways to defend this and go, it screwed up my diplomatic relationships with Russia while I was president because of blah, blah, blah. You could frame it that way. But he didn't. He got really personal, like he was defending his friend or, again, somebody who has leverage against him. I think of all of it, that was the most bizarre moment in the whole thing.
It's hard to pick the most bizarre moment. There's so many. But at the end of the day, all of us, and I know this is a bitter pill to swallow because we don't like to think that we're so vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of almost, a fantastical idea out of a Tom Clancy novel or The Manchurian Candidate. But we have to get past that and recognize there's something wrong in the Oval. There's really something wrong with the executive branch. And all roads lead back to Moscow. And that should give everybody pause for concern. We cannot ignore this anymore. We can't pretend it's not happening.
We got to take a break. And Trump seems to be playing this whole he doesn't have the cards, we have the cards. This kind of weird idea that he has leverage over Zelenskyy in a way that I don't know that he understands or can. Again, whoever desires to fight on has the cards, not the person who is trying to rein them in, unless you can you can benefit them in some other way. And since he's unwilling to do that because he's on the side of Russia, he doesn't have any cards. Trump doesn't have any cards to play with Ukraine because he cannot acquiesce to any of their demands and still satisfy Putin. He can't do it. He can't give them security guarantees. He can't allow French and European or German troops or British troops, as peacekeepers, or certainly not U.S. troops. And he can't protect American financial interests going after rare earth minerals that he calls without it. Can't do it. We have to take a break. When we come back, he spoke outside the, on his way to the helicopter or whatever, and You can see he's still trying to look like he's in deal maker mode. But ultimately, the loser in this is Russia, because there is no, if the Ukrainians are pantsed by the United States and their arms are taken away, which isn't going to happen anytime soon, but is a possibility, and they still fight on and they're still beating Russia, and Europe is helping them. Russia's still in the weak position. Russia is losing cards day after day. And there was a turn of events related to China and Russia that no one noticed because of all this noise. And I want to tell you about it when we come back. It's the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Philip Bittner has a show called On the Edge on his YouTube channel. Please subscribe to it, and we'll be back right after this. Let's see if I can find this story to show you guys. But Russia and North Korea built a bridge between their countries across this one river delta thing, which is in northern China. It's one of the few ways you can get shipments out. Thank you. Get shipments out to the ocean. And they built the bridge intentionally 10 meters high so you can't get a big box shipping boat through it. They did it on purpose. And further down.
Welcome back to the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that in the midst of all this stuff, which is a lot of loud and shocking and embarrassing blather coming from the White House, and Trump and Vance they're like the Hanna-Barbera version of villains when, compared to the real villains on the planet in a lot of ways. Trump is he can't even be an evil villain in the traditional sense because he's a compromise guy. He's just the guy that gets leveraged on. He's Anthony Michael Hall in the new Reacher series, right? He's the red herring bad guy that turns out is having his strings, right? He's being marionetted by somebody else.
Season 3.
Yeah, I am too. It's a little closer to the original concept, which is nice. But this over the last couple of months, we've seen Russia and North Korea grow closer. And one of the things that North Korea served as far as China's diplomatic interests was that China had leverage over North Korea and therefore could basically threaten. They could let the dog off the leash a little bit or pull the leash in to control the United States. And we were aware that they would, through material support and other stuff that China would give to North Korea, they could have a little bit of control over how much they threatened us. And China didn't have to do it themselves. They could set up a system where, we had to deal with North Korea a lot or a little, and that would distract us when they needed it and stuff. Well, because of the Ukraine war and because Russia's running out of people, they started using North Korean troops, and Russia built this relationship, built a bridge between North Korea and Russia. Well, over the last couple of months, they built an actual bridge. There's a bridge that connects Russia and North Korea now that they built for goods and services and military stuff to come across the water of this, this river that goes between this delta that goes out into the ocean. That just happens to be one of the ways that China gets goods from the interior of the North Country out to the ocean. And it now blocks it. And it wasn't an accident. Russia and North Korea could have built a higher bridge, but they built it 10 meters off the surface of the water because you can't get a giant box shipping container ship through there. And then they built another one that's 8 meters off the water further down the river to make it worse. So that even then they couldn't get, if they did one of these lower rung ships, they still couldn't get it through. This is not an accident. And this is a coordinated effort between Russia and North Korea that is specifically to choke off a section of China's industry. Mostly that serves the northwestern part of the United States and Vancouver, which is where a lot of that shipment would go. Never mind the stuff that would go all the way out and around into the other ports and the like. This all the while China has changed the name of old areas lost during the Russia-China war back to their Chinese names on maps. If you think the Gulf of America nonsense is crazy, go look at China's map of chunks of Russia that they now claim as their own. And the minute Putin falls, they're not going to miss this but this train when it comes around a second time. This once it whistle stops by, they're jumping on. And if Putin falls and there's another bite at that 91 apple, China's going to seize a huge chunk of their territory back. That is
there's no love lost between them.
None. And it's bizarre right now that I think maybe why Russia is working their leverage on Trump as much as they are is because they're losing so much leverage elsewhere in the world. Like, maybe you can get something from North Korea worthwhile, but they don't have enough food for their own people. They don't make fuel the way you do, and their arms are really just a backfill. It's not like there's something extraordinary that they have, rare earth minerals or uranium or whatever the hell. None of that exists. So there is a shift going on under the surface that Trump and Vance, I don't believe, intellectually have the capacity to understand. And I think they're just happy having their strings pulled by Russia because it's almost like the devil they understand it in a way that they can't understand this other stuff because it's too complicated.
Also the Kremlin can't be happy right now because they stepped in it. Europe is, emergency flares are going up all throughout the continent. And what Trump has effectively done, Trump and Vance have effectively done by withdrawing from Europe, from retreating, let's call it what it is, from Europe, that diminishes their capacity to influence things in Europe. So we are starting to hear, and we've been hearing it for a while since since the inauguration, but certainly now after yesterday's disastrous thing in the Oval, is that the Europeans are starting to say, you know what, America, if you want to go, we hate to see you go. We'd rather you were here.
Right.
But if you're going to go, go.
Yeah.
But what that means is don't tell us what to do. You can't dictate to us anymore. You want to be ineffectual? Go ahead. Leave. Be on your way. We don't want it.
Right.
But what Trump has done is diminish the capacity for him and for him to use American influence on the continent.
Right.
The Europeans are going to continue to support Ukraine.
Yeah.
Now, what's Trump going to do when he wants things to go differently with the Ukrainian
He's got no leverage.
He won't have any leverage.
Right. Exactly.
He's a moron.
Yeah.
He's just hobbled himself.
That's
and
right.
American power.
Right.
And Putin is not going to like that because he needs Trump to be able to put pressure on the Europeans. And now the Europeans are like, hasta la vista.
Right.
Good job, Donnie.
I don't know if we're gathering questions, Johnny, if you have some in the chat room. If you've got some for Phil, I don't want to bulldoze past them too much. What do we have?
Yeah. So I've got one. This is from Surrender Monkey. This is for both Hallie and Phil. So when Trump pulls out of NATO, he will lose all the bases America has within NATO countries. Wouldn't this only benefit Russia?
Well, it could benefit Putin, I guess, to some degree. I don't know about Russia itself, because again, there's a lot of this stuff that just is unavoidable. A lot of the direction that China and Russia are both on, as far as demographics, economics, technology, and stuff, it's a dead end. There's I think there's almost some parallels between like Muscovites and Beijingites as a control point, where at some point it very well may be that they just jettison the rest of the country as just flotsam and jetsam, where they just don't need it anymore. Like, I don't know, if you're not gonna get oil and gas from the Siberia and the like, what's it really for? And aren't you better off just focusing on whatever you're doing?
And if he does,
go ahead.
Yeah, if he does do that, then the Europeans will have no other choice but to develop their own security alliance that won't include America.
Right.
Again, diminishing America's ability to exert power and benefiting the Europeans because they will have more autonomy. Although, having said that, I know that there is having lived in Europe for half of my life, I spent much time in America as I've lived in Europe. There are those in Europe who treasure and appreciate the transatlantic alliance. I mean, this is what this week's episode is going to be about. By the way, we have a guy on who is a German, he runs a German think tank, talking about these very things, about what is in the best interest of Europe when it comes to a military alliance and security, and what is in the best interest of America, and aren't we better together? But if we have to separate ourselves, it is time. The Europeans could benefit from going there. Europe goes its road, America goes its road. I don't agree with it. I'm not happy about it, but I can see the benefit for the Europeans, who will be able to have more agency in what is done with their security structure, internally within the continent. But it's not good. It's all of it is not good, and it's we're walking into a very dangerous space, and so we talk about it at great length on this week's episode.
Well, I also think I think there's a lot of European leaders who recognize that they've had issues with these kind of like right-wing flare-ups in their own countries, and America, and obviously there's a strong Russian hand behind that, or that's puppeting these kind of things. They're very aware, especially after yesterday, that Trump and Vance are of that ilk, that this is just one of the successes that they had. And, Russia was able, maybe because of our distance from Russia, to get away with it in a way that Europeans get a closer look at it, and certainly the Russians have been limited, Seth Rich, notwithstanding, they've been able to, avoid snuffing people on the streets of the United States. Where in Europe they've done it a few times and it's been a big story, right? But it happens over there and it's almost like something you'd see in a movie to most Americans. So they're more aware of it because it's right in their face or whatever. And so they view Trump and Vance as a Russian success. That was an example of, it was cheap, and they were able to control the United States through a very relatively simple means. They were funding migration for a long time on the southern border, driving those numbers up during the Biden administration, specifically under the guys, misworking the asylum system, arguably making the Republicans that they had on a short leash go against the Biden border bill that was almost identical to the Lake and Riley Act that Trump ended up signing once he got in. The only difference was the label on top of it, right? But hold off on doing that. Give us as much leverage so we can get into office and control things. And even still, it didn't really work. It was 78-75. He won he keeps talking about how he won all these counties. Well, most of the counties in the United States are basically empty. You don't win by county. It's human votes, and it was 78 million to 75 plus. So it's, we're still a very divided country as far as the electorate goes. So I think the Europeans are aware of this, but they're going to have to boil this frog before, it realizes, to make it realize the water's hot. They're going to have to start cranking up the pressure on Trump and Vance and have him, Mr. Dealmaker, shown for the fraud that he is.
Yeah, and the whole narrative, I see all of this victory dance that's going on with we're walking away from Europe, ha ha ha, take care of yourself, and going, oh no, come back.
Yeah,
they're getting the response of all right, off you go.
Yep.
Hate to see you leave, but off you go.
Yep.
When is MAGA going to realize, oh, wait a minute, we're now isolated and we're not the big boy?
Well, it's also when are they going to realize
we're too big to ignore?
Yeah, when are they going to realize that Vance and or specifically and Elon Musk are both stiff arming European tech talent for Indian tech talent because it's cheaper. And if they, if they drive Europeans away, they can use that as leverage for we got to fill these jobs from someplace, and they can, they can get cheaper temp labor from India to come in and do these things, and then bounce them after the fact. And it's, it's racist as hell, but that's clearly part of the strategy. Europeans who come over here look like the other Scandinavians around Minnesota and Wisconsin and the like, and they're harder to pry loose. from MAGA, once they're here. Whereas, Indians, you work people to death, and then if you fire them or or they try to quit because you're working them too much, you just kill their visa and send them home. That's what the H-1B is for, right? That's their pressure point. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll take more questions from the chat after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program.
And
yes.
if you're on the stream, if you're not, go on the stream because I'm about to show something adorable.
Okay. All right. Good. Excellent. We'll be back right after this. I didn't even know you had pictures of Johnny Million as a baby.
I don't,
the
but I have this
adorable.
picture.
Are you going to wait for the happy song?
That is. Oh, I should have waited for the happy song. You're absolutely right.
That's okay. Yeah, I'll show it.
Newest addition to the on. That is the newest addition to the On the Edge team. That is the newborn son of my editor, Sasha. That's his kid, who will grow up in a sovereign Ukraine. We're going to make damn sure of it.
Why don't I see it?
It's in the chat. It's in the interview window.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yeah. There you go. So
look at the purple baby.
Yeah, on screen right now. The newest member of the On the Edge. I've got it up on screen, Phil. You can see it right there. It's
I see it.
Yeah. Super adorable.
That is the newborn son. That is the newborn son of my Ukrainian editor. And we all congratulate, the entire team congratulates him, and it reinvigorates our dedication to making sure that young child there, that little baby boy grows up in a sovereign and a free Ukraine. And we're going to make sure we're going to do everything that we can in our power to make sure that kid grows up in Ukraine that we all want to build. So
that's right.
Congratulations, Shasta, on the arrival of your son.
Aw, super adorable. And Johnny Million's cats are doing wonderfully. I think that's a good, happy ending element or whatever.
Big.
And we've got our dear little, my girlfriend's son has bought a house. He and his girlfriend are moving into a house together, which is just a huge, ridiculous thing because I met him when he was 6, and now he's buying a house with his girlfriend. They're living together. It's really lovely. But and he's 9 now. It's amazing how they grow up so fast. But no, he's it's a big house. They don't need all that room, obviously, and he can barely make it up the stairs. But no, he's 22, and they decided she's got a cat named Salem, black cat named Salem, which is adorable. And they got a new one, Cinnamon, a brown cat, which is very strange to find, like a purely brown cat, long hair. And she's staying at our house right now. She's being, she's we're basically cat sitting until she can move into the place, which is lovely. And I get to drive back and help with the move today. So as soon as I am done with the radio show, I hop in the car and drive back to Vegas. And then I got some tech work to do, and then tomorrow we have a big moving day, and it'll be really lovely. And I want to thank everybody, by the way, for your support with the super chats and welcoming Johnny back. That was very lovely of you guys. Really appreciate it. And it's really nice. And so let's grab some other questions before we run out of time, because there's obviously a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I've got a couple more here. Ed's 3D Tech asks, can you ask Philip what's going on with Tourette's and why Russia losses are so elevated?
The specifics of the battle line, I can't speak to. I mean, I leave that to the scrimmage line boys. But they have definitely been blunted out east.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Krovsk has also been a situation where they've been they've been repelled. Look, the Russians are not doing well, and Ukraine is, still being inventive and using new techniques and all that kind of stuff. So it's just more example of the fact that this narrative that Ukraine is losing this war, or is destined to lose this war, which is what Trump and Vance are basing their entire narrative, and the entire MAGA movement that has now become anti-Ukraine, is we don't want to keep throwing money into this money pit because Ukraine can't win. Well, that's patently not right. That's untrue. They are absolutely.
They are protecting Russia's losses. This is all about stymieing Russia's losses, because Russia cannot continue to fight at the losses they are sustaining. Like somewhere in the order of, it's like 80-20 at this point, that most of the Russian losses come from drones. So the Ukrainians aren't losing soldiers at the clip they were at the beginning of the war, or even in the middle of it. It is now shifted entirely, and the Russians, because they have to physically take the ground, because they are an invading force, it's not enough that they can just drone strike people. They have to be there and hold the ground. The Ukrainians don't. The Ukrainians are driving them back. So all they got to do is clear the ground and wait, because it's their country. And so that strategically puts the Russians at a disadvantage. Right now, in regard to, was it Kramatorsk, or the town, the first one they were asking about?
There's Toretsk, and there's Petrovsk.
Right. So Petrovsk, in Petrovsk and Toretsk, the Russians, in trying to take both of those cities, have lost more soldiers trying to claim those two areas each than America lost in Vietnam. Think about that for a second.
And those are small.
They're nothing.
You call them cities. They're not cities.
They're not.
They're built for 80,000 people. They haven't even approached the main logistical hub and the kind of gateway to the Donbass, which is Kramatorsk, and that was built for over 100,000 people.
Yeah,
That's
U.S.
going to be a grind for them. They don't have the capacity.
It is. I mean, think about the circumstances. The United States lost 58,000 soldiers approximately in Vietnam. Russia has lost that many soldiers in both of these battles for cities that don't even have, in some cases, that many people living in them, that they couldn't, if those soldiers just moved in and lived there, they would still be a smaller, like a larger group than most of the inner part of the city. And they're dead. This isn't even the wounded. This isn't even the North Koreans. They've been at this for the better part of a year on both of these fronts, really putting a lot of extra effort into both of these. And they have lost more people fighting for these little slips of land, these, some Toledo suburb, than the U.S. lost in Vietnam.
And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. And if people haven't heard me say it, maybe this is the first time they're tuning in. Unless Russia's primary objective in this war are twofold. There's a lot of other things, but their primary goals are twofold. Change the government in Kiev to one that's favorable to Moscow, and take control back of the Black Sea by seizing Odessa, neither of which they have the means to do.
Right.
The narrative that Ukraine cannot win this war is utterly wrong. As a matter of fact, I contend Russia lost this war the second they had to retreat from the capital.
Agree.
So Trump and Vance are wrong, and the MAGA movement is wrong.
And again, what happens to Kursk? Think about for a second that the Ukrainians seized a section of Russian territory, and they still have it. They were never driven out of that. That seems like I remember the extraordinary nature of that, where they bum rushed into actual Russia and took this area. They still have it. The Ukrainians not only has Russia not seized materially a good deal of land, but the Ukrainians in this war have seized Russian territory inside their thing. Where is that in the negotiations? What does Trump think in his little document that he and Vance wanted Zelenskyy to sign? That they just, you guys leave Kursk and blah, blah, blah. No. Why? Why would we ever leave Kursk? Why would we? It's a mile and a half, whatever. It's 2 hours from Moscow. something like that, an hour and a half if you drive really fast. Why would we give up that leverage and that, that part of it? As far as we're concerned, that's part of Ukraine now. If you're going to say that's part of Russia, that the stuff they seize from us, why is this not Ukrainian territory from now on? Like, what's the argument there? And how does Trump make it?
On the other end, and equally on the other end of the equation,
yeah,
the demand that Ukraine would cede territory in the 4 oblasts, much of whom they haven't actually taken ground in. They've just held a false referendum that Ukraine would cede that territory, is a non-starter as well. So this whole thing, Trump was putting on a platter a way to end this war is completely BS, and it's his fake like, oh, if only they'd just done what I told them to do, the war would be over. Well, no, that's not acceptable to Ukraine, because surrender is not peace. That is defeat. And Ukraine is not defeated.
And they have no reason to do it because, again, Trump's like, they don't have the cards. They absolutely do. Russia's the one that is, obviously has been exposed to not having, you all right? Yeah. Has now been exposed as not having the second best military in the world or any of that nonsense, right? That's clearly not true. And they have, again, I think that has to be part of the conversation now when the press talks to Trump and Vance about this, that the Russians invaded, and they have now, and they should, instead of being asked about it as a broad swath, like they sent rape squads into Bucha, and they even were made to retreat. There are mass graves there that they have to answer for. And they have tried to take, several cities and lost more people than the U.S. lost in Vietnam, trying to take, little towns. Why in the world is the U.S. supporting them in this aggression? And then let them answer it. Don't don't rearrange your question to fit their narrative. Drop that, and if they don't answer it, let that hang in the air. Because that's the only way to get through these folks. Yeah. It's the only way is that, even if they don't hear it, even if they don't grasp it, the people around them, their own followers, their own supporters, maggots themselves, aren't deaf at the end of the day, vast majority of them. And they will hear this and go, well, all right, but leave Trump alone. Like, they still have to have that thought burrowing into the back of their brain all the time. Just right there next to, why are we not getting the Epstein files? The other one is like, why would you support Russia failing in a terrible invasion of a smaller country for no other reason than the blather that's in Putin's brain? Tomorrow's show, On the Edge, please check it out with Philip Ittner. Johnny Million's back to making live streams.
Good one this week.
Johnny Million's back to making live streams now that he's feeling better, and that makes us all very happy. And I'll see you guys on Monday for HAL Sparks Mega Worldwide at infotainmentwars.com. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, patreon.com and /HAL Sparks, and we will see you next time. There we go.
All right, floofy hair.
Captain's log.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So
that wasn't me, Phil.
That was me. That was Operation Warp Speed.
All right, guys.
Warp Speed.
Captain's log.
So thank you guys so much. I will see you guys later. See you on Wednesday, okay. Phil. Johnny, we're glad.
Talk to you on Wednesday.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you guys later. Okay. Bye. Thank you, Chicago. Thank you. I'm so glad this worked. It actually worked. And I can't believe it, but it actually worked. Look at that. Chicago was able to come in. Phil was able to come in. I didn't have an audio loop back problem with them. It's just a glorious thing. Thank you guys so much. Woof. I'm all right. It's always something, kids. And I appreciate you guys being here and supporting the show. Thanks again to everybody super chatted. And 1 second, let me look over here real quick. Now I have, look at that. We made it 10 out of 10 on our super chat goal. They have a thing on they have a thing on YouTube where you can now do a super chat goal, and I was like, all right, we'll set that up, I guess, and it worked. And thank you guys so much, so lovely. And thanks to everybody, all the Patreon folks who enjoyed the show last night. It is up on the Patreon if you want to watch it, even if you couldn't watch it live. I'm about a half hour in. There's I start at the beginning so you can see Charlene and Brian and Jan and it's an overall good show. But that's for you guys. Much love. Hal, do you have a PO box to send stuff to? Captain America thing? Yes, I do indeed. That we post it in here sometimes. It's on the website. It's on halsparks.com on the contact sheet, on the contact page, if you want to look there. Yeah. And I'm updating that address this week, just so you know. Because it's like after the fires, it became increasingly hard to go to my P.O. box, which is in Santa Monica. So I'm having to move that. So, yeah. And I appreciate you guys liking the hair right now. It's very, even with like the background creates this flow. So it's actually, it looks bigger than it is because you're seeing part of the wall through it. So it's making my hair look bigger than it is. But it's very Mark Slaughter right now. If I didn't have this, it would look very much, Fly to the Angels. So anyways, much love to you guys. Take care. I got to hit the road, and I will see you guys. Enjoy Boston Brian tomorrow. I might drop in with him. I wasn't able to last week, so depending on when the move is, we got a big moving day tomorrow. So if I'm able to, I will do that. If not, I might join him later in the week or have him join me to talk about some of these things because I think it would be a great conversation. And thanks to everybody, who donates and everybody who becomes a member and all that kind of stuff. It is just lovely of you guys. And is that sound effect coming? I hear the sound effect, but it's got to be in here. And there's got to be... Why do I not hear it? This widget right here. Where's this guy? Dink, dink. Okay, that's just... I see. So that's the... Where are you, you silly thing? Maybe it's in the background. Ooh, there we go. Wow, see? That's what I was hearing. I knew it was coming from somewhere. I turned the audio up so I could find it, and I still don't know where it is. So anyways, much love you guys. Thank you for the support. Thank you very much, and I will see you guys later. Oh, wait, I have to start my music because it's all isolated and all that kind of stuff. Take care, kids, and I will see you on Monday.